The walnut door to Blackwood Capital's conference suite whispered shut behind me, cutting away the city's hum and leaving only the antiseptic hush of money in its most judgmental form. Frosted glass walls blurred the silhouettes of clerks drifting by, but the boardroom itself, sleek, scentless, surgically lit, felt like a hunting blind where 8 suits waited to pull the trigger on my future. My name is Callista Mercer, and in that moment, every skill, favor, and midnight revision I'd poured into my business plan crystallized into a single printout trembling beneath my palm. I refused to let the shaking show. I'd ironed my charcoal dress until each pleat sliced like a blade, braided my copper hair into the kind of knot that whispered both control and punishment, and rehearsed my pitch until sentences became muscle memory. Yet nothing prepared me for the predatory stillness that met me across polished oak. "Ims. Mercer," said Martin Hale, senior partner, with the courteous dryness usually reserved for declining champagne at a funeral. "We've reviewed your application." No greeting, no offer of water, just those words, and a silence that seemed to dilate forever before I exhaled. Hale adjusted his cufflink, platinum of course, and slid the leather folder toward him as though it were evidence in a criminal trial. I watched the crest of Blackwood, a stylized raven, flash beneath the LED track lighting. My first mentor once told me institutions named after ominous birds made their money by picking at carrion others left behind. I'd laughed at the joke then. Now I knew it was a warning. For 3 years, I'd lived out of a shoebox flat over a shuttered bakery to funnel every spare pound into Arcadia Eco-Packaging, my answer to a market drowning in cheap petroleum plastics. We had prototypes that dissolved in seawater without microfragments, supplier contracts waiting for the green light, and a purchase order from a national grocery chain contingent on scale. All I needed was the bridge capital, £3 million to automate production lines, and unlock my first tranche of sustainable loyalty deals. Only $3 million, I'd told myself. In the grand theater of venture finance that was spare change. Less than a London townhouse, less than a Premier League striker's monthly wage. But to me it was breath, marrow, sunlight. Hale's gaze was winter. Your concept is ambitious, a diplomatic synonym for reckless. Another partner, a woman with a bob sharp enough to shave steel, flipped through pages with nails painted the exact shade of blood oranges. Projected margins hinge on regulatory incentives not yet enacted. Translation: we don't believe the government will ever choose the planet over profit. I opened my mouth to counter, to cite the pending EU directive, to show letters of intent from retailers, gasping for ESG-compliant suppliers. But Hale raised a languid hand. "Please, indulge us with the short version," he said. "Why should Blackwood shoulder the risk?" "Because you're supposed to invest in the future," I wanted to scream. "Because your firm's mission statement claims you back, quote, visionary disruption." Instead, I inhaled, tasted recycled air, and spoke the words I had polished until they gleamed. I told them about the biodegradable polymer spun from British seaweed farms, the closed-loop waste systems that turned peelings from juice factories into resin, the life cycle analyses showing carbon offsets so clean they could sell credits twice over. I told them about my grandmother who died coastal because a storm sewer vomited plastic pellets that choked her oysters, a personal anecdote to remind investors that numbers were lives wearing decimals. I finished with the slide deck's invisible final slide, the pledge that failure here would cost more than money, it would cost time the planet no longer had. When I stopped, the only sound was the tick of the conference room clock, a metronome marking heartbeats. Hale steepled his fingers. "Impassioned," he said. "But passion isn't collateral." The woman with the razor bob closed the folder. "Your balance sheet shows you've personally guaranteed the previous seed round. You own your flat, correct?" "Yes," I said, throat tightening. It was 13 square meters and smelled perpetually of sourdough ghosts, but legally it was mine. "To secure any facility of this size," Hale said, "we would require your residence as collateral, plus a lien on future revenues." I swallowed. "You're asking me to gamble the roof over my head." "We're asking you to invest in your conviction," he corrected, as if grammar outweighed gravity. I thought of the nights I'd fallen asleep at my desk with seaweed prototypes crisping like autumn leaves, of the 57 investors I'd already pitched, of the competitor Blue Haven Plastics, who flirted with eco-branding while secretly lobbying against biodegradability standards. I thought of the plastic-packed coastline where my grandmother's ashes scattered. And I realized something raw and electric. I would rather burn down my own dream than chain it to predators. No, I said. The partners exchanged polite surprise, as if the rabbit had bitten the hound. Excuse me? Hale asked. I won't stake my home. My company should stand on its own merits, not on extortionary collateral. My voice didn't tremble, though my spine felt like glass. Hale slid the folder back across the table, dismissal incarnate. Then we have nothing further. The meeting ended with a handshake colder than marble. The door opened. The corridor swallowed me, and Blackwood's logo, Black Raven on white field, watched my retreat like an omen carved in bone. Rain needled the Thames embankment as I walked without umbrella, each gust whipping my coat like a flag of surrender. Double-decker buses hissed past. Neon reflections jittered on puddles. Behind the blur of water, I saw my reflection in shop-front glass. Drenched, lashes spiked, but eyes volcanically alive. Rejection had not broken me. It had detonated something older, fiercer. The drizzle deepened to a downpour, and I ducked beneath the iron canopy of a closed bookshop, chest heaving with an anger that felt borrowed from some younger version of myself. The girl who, at 13, melted soda bottles in a makeshift solar kiln and recast them as garden tiles for the neighbors, only to watch adults coo at the novelty and then toss their cups into the bin moments later. I remembered standing ankle-deep in litter on Brighton Beach, deciding the world would not change until somebody forced it to, design by design, law by law. Somewhere along the line, optimism mutated into spreadsheets, into supply chain logistics, into public relations strategies that quantified moral indignation in percentages of brand engagement. On the water-painted sidewalk, I caught the reflection of that teenage vigilante staring back, daring me to prove I hadn't abandoned her to the polite cannibals of finance. I straightened, pulse steadying. The bank had declined my vision, not my worth, and if I could not raise the mountain, I would alter the river's course. That night, in my flat above the dead bakery, I spread financial statements across the floorboards. Bank of England guidance printed that morning lay beside spreadsheets coated with insomnia. Candlelight guttered. Electricity was cheaper after 11. Ellen sat cross-legged opposite, dark curls escaping her bun, her eyes reflecting flame. So they wanted your soul as deposit, she said. And firstborn if I had one. I rubbed temples that pulsed like warning lights. Blue Haven will flood the market with their faux green packaging before year's end. Without capital, Arcadia dies on the starting line. Ellen traced circles on the paper. What if we beat them some other way, partner? License? Partners want proof of scale. Scale needs cash. I stared at the ceiling, where plaster cracks mapped continents. Lightning forked outside. In the flash, I saw a brutal elegance. Blackwood refused to invest, but money was fluid. It sought pressure gradients. What if I created the gradient? Something reckless whispered. Cal? Ellen nudged. I knelt, sweeping spreadsheets aside until Blue Haven's annual report stared up, smug and glossy. Hidden in footnotes. Expansion debt, lawsuits over worker safety in their Spanish plant, a litigation reserve that had quietly doubled. To the market they looked dominant. To me they now looked fragile. An idea unfurled like a serpent. Inject funds into Blue Haven, become creditor, then squeeze. Ellen watched the storm in my expression. What are you thinking? Leverage. The word tasted dangerous and sublime. If capital is a weapon, I'll point it where it hurts. Blue Haven? She blinked. They drink petrol and spit profits. Why help them? Because parasites can be bled, I said. If we own their debt, we control their oxygen. We can force compliance with regulations they lobby against, turn their own scale into our proof of concept. Ellen absorbed this, dawn of possibility flickering in her eyes. You'd need a syndicate, bigger money. I have contacts from the Climate Tech Fellowship. If I position it as an impact rescue of a struggling manufacturer, when really, it's commandeering their ship, Ellen finished, a wicked grin blooming. Now that's pirate justice. The next 72 hours blurred into a choreography of phone calls, video pitches, and bullet point wars fought at 2 a.m. I slept in 90-minute snatches on the sofa so Ellen could nudge me awake when California venture funds came online. Half of them listened, intrigued. A quarter ghosted. One told me to, "Come back when you have revenues, sweetheart." A syllabic pat on the head that fizzed in my bloodstream like acid. For every slight, my resolve calcified. At dawn on Sunday, I jogged the river path to clear the static from my skull, the air smelling of diesel and wet stone. Barges creaked beneath Waterloo Bridge. Gulls shrieked overhead, and every footfall hammered a single mantra. Their refusal is my permission. By the time I returned, sweat-soaked and hoarse, Ellen had mocked up convertible note term sheets and drafted a shareholder rights agreement that would make the Magna Carta look casual. We built a war room out of sticky notes. Green for potential allies, red for obstacles, yellow for unknown variables. By Monday, the wall glowed like a traffic system in panic. But amid the chaos, a route emerged. If we could align Kohler's green tech fund with the Chens' appetite for publicity, then Alvarez's moral crusade could serve as keystone, locking the syndicate into a shape no single party could dissolve without shattering their own reputation. It was finance Jenga. Remove one block and the tower collapses, but I intended to glue the pieces in place with shared ambition and a hint of fear. 2 weeks later, I stood in the glass atrium of Griffin & Moore, an investment boutique whose receptionist looked at my rain-spattered trench with the faint horror of someone spotting mud on marble. My heart sound-checked at 180 BPM, under my arm. A revised deck titled Project Lazarus. Deliberately vague, appetizingly altruistic. Inside conference room C, 4 potential co-investors waited. Lars Kohler, German family office scion with a taste for green bonds. Marisol Alvarez, Spanish venture angel nursing outrage over Blue Haven's factory lawsuits. And the twins, Oliver and Odette Chen, whose crypto-derived war chest searched daily for redemption narratives. I needed 2 of them to sign on. 3 would give me dominance. I began my pitch with a photograph, seawater so thick with plastic pellets it looked paved. I told them about Blue Haven's PR nightmare, their debt, their stalling RAND, and the chance to inject capital contingent on a pivot to true biodegradability standards demanded by the European Parliament's pending Directive 2040/18. Faces around the table sharpened. A single breathless second stretched, ripe with calculation, before Lars Kohler leaned forward, fingers templed, as though himself a cathedral of capital. "Ms. Mercer," he said in a Teutonic baritone honed by boardrooms and ski lodges, "you propose we underwrite the salvation of a company whose lobbyists have delayed those very standards for half a decade." I met his glacier blue stare. "Exactly. We take their fight-or-flight reflex and convert it into flight, on our terms." Odette Chen's lacquer black bob swayed as she tilted her head. "And we become the heroes?" "Publicly," I agreed. "Privately, we gain a controlling creditor position, an option pool in Arcadia licensing agreements, and first rights on carbon credit arbitrage when Blue Haven's emissions plunges. You profit 3 ways, and the planet gets a reprieve." Alvarez's dark eyes glinted. "Poetic justice." Oliver Chen tapped a Montblanc pen. "But how do you keep Blackwood from stepping in once they've smelled blood? They hold Blue Haven's revolving line." My pulse drummed. "We don't bludgeon Blackwood. We starve them, by forcing Blue Haven to prepay the revolver with our tranche, then refinance under covenants Blackwood would never accept. By the time their compliance department realizes we've novated the debt, they're left holding an empty scabbard." I watched comprehension flicker around the table like a fuse racing toward dynamite. Kohler exhaled, an alpine gust. "Show me numbers." I launched into projections. The cost curve of seaweed polysaccharides trending below petroleum derivatives by Q3 2027. The EU's €15 per kilogram plastic tax. The consumer brand premiums already pledged if supply chains turned truly circular. Slide after slide danced on the wall-mounted holoscreen, metrics descending like falling dominoes until they spelled one word: inevitability. When the last graph dissolved, silence settled, grave, expectant. Alvarez broke it with a soft clap, Palms meeting once. I'm in, conditional on a Spanish plant audit within 60 days. Kohler nodded. I'll commit 50% of the A round. I turned to the twins. Oliver scribbled figures. Odette's lips curved. We'll match Kohler if we get board observation rights at Arcadia. My throat tightened. Observation, yes, no voting. Observation, Odette echoed, shaking my hand with fingers cool as river stones. In that handshake, a new universe crystallized. I left Griffin and Moore with a signed term sheet weighing my briefcase like condensed starlight. Autumn sunlight knifed through London haze. Buses trundled, cafes hummed, and the city's ordinary roar felt impossibly fragile compared to the high-wire scheme now humming beneath my ribs. Ellen awaited in a rented car-share hatchback, engine idling. I slid into the passenger seat, shut the door, and for 3 seconds we just stared at each other, breathless. Then we screamed, wordless, exultant, like teenagers careening down a hill on stolen bicycles. "Show me," she gasped. I unfolded the term sheet. Her chocolate brown eyes darted across numbers, widening. "Cal, this, my God." "I know." My laugh was half sob, half roar. "We just bought ourselves a shot at saving the planet, and maybe bankrupting the ones poisoning it." Ellen slammed the steering wheel with both palms, wild grin radiant. "Let's go bankrupt some bastards." Over the next fortnight, we transformed from bedraggled startup survivors into clandestine kingmakers. Daylight hours blurred into strategy calls with Kohler's legal team in Frankfurt, Alvarez's auditors in Madrid, and the Chen's PR wizards in Silicon Valley. Nights became fluorescent vigils drafting covenants, modeling cash flows, and rehearsing contingencies. We needed Blue Haven's management desperate enough to accept our oxygen mask, yet not so panicked that Blackwood swooped first. Pressure had to be exquisite, surgical. Kohler's analysts found the fulcrum. Blue Haven's Spanish factory needed a €4 million retrofit to meet a newly enforced wastewater standard by January 1st. Failure meant a shutdown, supply chain chaos, and contract penalties that could trigger bank default covenants. We would announce an impact finance lifeline, package it as a sustainability makeover, and close before Christmas. Blue Haven would think we were saviors. We would know we were surgeons removing a malignant heart. On a wind-November morning, we boarded the red-eye to Seville, Ellen, Alvarez, and me, armed with hard hats, steel-toe boots, and the moral equivalent of brass knuckles. The factory squatted outside Dos Hermanas, a concrete labyrinth exhaling the sour-sweet reek of molten polymer. Inside, machines stamped out food tray prototypes at 180 degrees Celsius, while overhead lights cast jaundiced halos through chemical steam. The noise was an angry waterfall of gears. Plant manager Arturo Galvez greeted us in a neon vest, streaked with grease, mustache twitching. He eyed Alvarez's clipboard and my camera drone with suspicion. "Esta auditoria es intempestiva," he grumbled. The board did not forewarn me. Alvarez fixed him with black opal eyes. "Porque buscamos la verdad." We inspected effluent channels, sample tanks, and filter membranes brittle with residue. At each checkpoint, Alvarez's chemist dipped sensors that flashed crimson. Phosphates 3 times legal limit, pH caustic as bleach. Galvez paled. When we reached the sealed corridor labeled Rand D Beta, he attempted to divert us toward the canteen. I stepped between him and the door controls. "Open it," I said in Spanish, as cold as liquid nitrogen. Reluctantly, he keyed in a code. The door hissed. Inside, prototype film sheets hung from drying racks like flayed silver skin. A single glance at the spectral analyzer told me the polymer chain contained petroleum-based ethylene, at least 40%. Blue Haven's ecofilm was a lie. I shot video. Alvarez photographed. Galvez swore under breath. At noon, we convened in the administration block's glass-walled boardroom, sunlight exposing dust motes like microscopic jury members. CEO Warren Lockwood dialed in from London, aggressive jawline filling the hollow screen. "What exactly are you alleging, Ms. Mercer?" Non-compliance with EU Directive 1928 and fraudulent marketing, I replied evenly. But we're prepared to remedy both if you accept our refinancing proposal. Lockwood's nostrils flared. You intend to ransom us with our own liabilities? Call it moral leverage, Alvarez said. Accept the lifeline, pivot to genuine biopolymer under my audit, and we bury today's footage. Lockwood's gaze flicked to someone off screen, perhaps a lawyer. You become our majority creditor? That's virtual control. I met his digital eyes. Control with purpose. The alternative is regulatory fines, plant closure, shareholder lawsuits, and Blackwood calling the revolver by New Year's. Silence. My heartbeat thudded like a juggernaut. Finally, Lockwood exhaled. Send the documents. By December 10th, signatures dried on vellum-textured paper, and Arcadia SPV1, our special-purpose vehicle, owned 64% of Blue Haven's senior secured notes. We wielded the sword of Damocles by its hilt. The press release dropped at 9 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time. Impact Consortium injects £40 million into Blue Haven Plastics to accelerate full circular transition. Major outlets bit like piranhas. Stocks twitched upward. ESG pundits sang our virtue. Blackwood's lawyers fired off a politely poisonous letter requesting detail on the novation. Kohler's counsel replied with precisely the detail required by law, no more. Ellen and I toasted with supermarket Prosecco in my microscopic flat, laughing until bubbles stung our sinuses. The world outside buzzed with Christmas lights and repair cranes, and futures quietly rearranging themselves. But Victory's champagne aftertaste carried hints of lead. Because power finds power, and Blackwood did not enjoy being outmaneuvered. The counterattack arrived on a slate-gray afternoon, tucked inside a messenger envelope hand-delivered by a man in an immaculate wool coat who refused tea and vanished into drizzle before I could blink. Inside, a single sheet embossed with Blackwood's raven. Tumsams Ems. Mercer. We note irregularities in Arcadia SPV1's acquisition strategy, potentially constituting tortious interference and violation of UK competition law. We require immediate disclosure of syndicate communications and board-level intent. Failure to comply within 5 business days will compel us to seek injunctive relief. Blackwood Capital Regulatory Affairs Division. I stared at the letter, throat constricting. Tortious interference? They claimed we'd meddled in their existing relationship with Blue Haven. If a judge granted an injunction, our financing could freeze midstream, Blue Haven's plant retrofit would stall, and my entire plan would crumble. Ellen read the letter twice, jaw set. They're bluffing. You didn't coerce Blue Haven, they signed willingly. But disclosure of internal emails could scare the syndicate, I murmured. Investors despise spotlight litigation. She paced my shoebox kitchen. We have 5 days, we need a shield. I pressed fingers to my temples. What about the Competition and Markets Authority? If we voluntarily submit our structure for proactive review, Blackwood's injunction looks antagonistic, not protective. Ellen's eyes lit. Turn their weapon into evidence of anti-competitive bullying. We worked through the night drafting a notification to the CMA, attaching environmental benefit analyses, letters from Blue Haven workers welcoming the transition, even testimonial from the Andalusian mayor anticipating job security. At dawn, with frost silvering rooftops, I clicked submit and prayed bureaucracy would move faster than Blackwood's legal artillery. 2 days later, I stepped into Westminster Palace's committee wing to brief an MP who chaired the Environmental Audit Committee. Alvarez accompanied, her Spanish lilt sharpened for politics. Kohler dialed in. We argued that our buyout of Blue Haven's debt exemplified market-driven sustainability and merited parliamentary praise. The MP, a red-haired Scotswoman with eyes like steel cutlery, took notes, nodded, and finally said, Your plan wounds interests older than you can fathom. Be ready for counter-narratives. I exited into winter sunlight, unsettled and electrified. Hours later, a headline detonation. Entrepreneurs Eco-Consortium linked to offshore tax havens. The article, published by a tabloid with historic ties to Blackwood, dredged up the Chen twins' early crypto holdings in the Seychelles and insinuated money laundering. No illegality, mere insinuation. But in media hell, insinuation equals arson. Social feeds roiled. ESG commentators pivoted. Blue Haven's share price wobbled. Within minutes, Odette Chen texted a single line, "Handle this." Panic clawed my throat, but the teenage vigilante inside me snarled. "Enough," I whispered to the cold glass of a bus shelter. That night, I convened an emergency video call with the syndicate. Faces flickered in rectangles. Alvarez smoldering, Kohler stoic, the twins icy. "Blackwood is waging narrative warfare," I said. "We counter with transparency. We publish the full covenant package, the environmental impact projections, the municipal endorsements. We bury them in daylight." Kohler folded arms. "Public release exposes proprietary margins." "Or we bleed slowly," I shot back. "Choose." Silence. Then Alvarez, "Do it." The twins exchanged glances. Oliver spoke. "We want veto rights on future media steps." "Granted," I said, though my stomach knotted at every new concession. By midnight, our comms team blasted a detailed dossier to every journalist in my contact list. Financial modeling redacted where essential, but enough to prove integrity. Side by side, we posted drone footage of Blue Haven's refitted bioreactors already digesting seaweed slurry. The next morning, headlines warred. Some still parroted Blackwood's doubt, but others hailed a startup Davina who outsmarted the Raven. Blackwood's legal department responded with a new volley, a writ accusing us of insider trading on non-public legislative drafts. They claimed we leveraged knowledge of Directive 2040-18 before its text circulated officially. Ellen threw the writ onto my desk, eyes wide. "They'll drag Parliament staff into discovery," quote. I massaged a headache blossoming behind my skull. "Then we accelerate. Blue Haven's pilot production line goes live next week. If we flood the market with genuine biodegradable packaging before Blackwood entangles us, regulators will hesitate to cripple a visible climate solution." Christmas Eve. Snow hissed against sodium streetlights. Instead of carols, my flat thrummed with the deep bass of industrial equipment live streaming from Seville. Conveyors rumbled. Lime green sheets of Arcadia film spooled onto reels stamped with QR codes, linking to full life cycle disclosures. Ellen and I sat cross-legged on the floor, mugs of cocoa cooling, laptop glow illuminating exhausted smiles. "First ton shipped," she whispered as numbers updated. "We did it." Outside, church bells tolled midnight mass. Somewhere, my grandmother's oysters breathed easier. A knock rattled the door. I frowned. Couriers didn't work past 9 on Christmas Eve. I rose, crossed the creaky floorboards, unlocked the deadbolt. Warren Lockwood stood in the dim hallway, snowflakes melting on the shoulders of a charcoal overcoat. His expression was not triumph or rage, but something colder, resignation sharpened by urgency. He handed me a sealed manila envelope, edges damp from sleet. "You need to see this, Callista. We're in more danger than you know." My lungs froze. "What are you talking about?" "Blackwood doesn't care about Blue Haven. They care about destroying you. They've securitized your syndicate's debt, sold tranches to a shell company, and plan to short your supply contracts into oblivion. If they succeed, you'll default within weeks." Ellen appeared behind me, shock etched across her face. I stared at Lockwood. "Why warn me?" "Because I finally believe in what you're building," he said, voice cracking like ice underfoot. "And because if Blackwood wins, I go down too. They've made me guarantor." Thunder rolled in my ears. I opened the envelope. Inside, spreadsheets detailed covert derivatives, bearer bond chains looping through Gibraltar and the Caymans. Expiration dates aligned with our earliest delivery milestones. A noose hidden in algorithms. Lockwood met my eyes. "You have 48 hours to raise enough collateral to stop the short or find a buyer who'll absorb it. After that," he let the sentence drown in silence. Christmas church bells echoed like funeral chimes. My fingers tightened on the envelope until nails cut skin. I felt the teenage vigilante rise again, but she was no longer alone. She was armed with syndicate alliances, factory floors, and righteous fury. Ellen squeezed my arm. "What do we do?" I inhaled winter air and tasted iron. "We go bigger. We find an ally with pockets Blackwood can't intimidate. Lockwood's shoulders sagged relief. There might be one, a sovereign wealth fund courting green equity. I glanced at the live stream of biopolymer reels, spinning like the world's most delicate satellites. They were proof human intention could rewrite doom, but only if given room to orbit. Then we fly, I whispered. Outside, snow swirled, indifferent to wars of profit. But in its hush, I heard the ghost of a coastline freed from plastic crackle with possibility. And I swore under my breath that Blackwood's raven would choke on the dawn. Lockwood's revelation rang in my ears long after snow melted to slush on the corridor carpet. 48 hours. That was the lifespan of our newborn future before Blackwood's short sold it into stillbirth. I didn't sleep. I paced the length of my flat, 14 measured steps, while Ellen hammered spreadsheets into shape, and Warren, newly defected, scavenged his network for sovereign lifelines. Outside, Christmas morning dawned mute and pewter, London's skyline blurred by sleet that looked like static on an old television set. Families unwrapped gifts while I unwrapped threat matrices. At 6:30, Ellen slammed her laptop shut. Abu Dhabi. I blinked. The ADESF? Abu Dhabi Environmental Sovereign Fund was rumored to keep a green tech war chest bigger than some nations' GDP. Exactly, she said. They just sold a fossil fuel stake and pledged to redeploy within the quarter. Imagine the optics. Middle Eastern petrodollars diverted to European biodegradables. Lockwood, sipping burnt coffee by the frosted window, nodded. They'll love anything that torpedoes Blackwood. Those vultures blocked their bid for a North Sea wind farm last year. We exchanged looks. An enemy's enemy might be our salvation. Sarai. By midday, we had 3 business-class seats on Emirates, 4 p.m. out of Heathrow. I tossed essentials into a carry-on. Laptop, power banks, the manila folder of Blackwood's derivative snare, and 1 seaweed polymer sample wrapped in waxed cloth for tactile persuasion. Ellen printed decks and board resolutions on acid-free cotton paper, old-school credibility. Cal, she warned as we sped down Cromwell Road in a hail-slick taxi, ADSF's investment committee is brutal. Half their members live on Second Mint in Geneva. They demand a level of due diligence that makes Vatican canonization look casual. I'll show them miracles, I muttered, marveling at how fear could feel identical to adrenaline when channeled. Terminal 3 heaved with delayed holiday travelers. Security confiscated the reusable water bottle I'd forgotten to empty. I watched a liter of thrift pour into a stainless drain, blaming lack of sleep. In the lounge, Lockwood briefed us on ADESF protocol. First, a gatekeeper meeting with Dr. Samira Al-Rashid, Ph.D. in polymer chemistry, now Chief Impact Officer, then a conference call vote by the investment committee. Samira once told Forbes she only backs visions framed as planetary infrastructure, he said. Don't sell packaging, sell ecological continuity. Ellen snorted. Callista sells survival on tap. I half smiled, thumb grazing the seaweed film inside my bag. 38,000 feet above Anatolia, while cabin lights dimmed for dinner, my phone buzzed with an encrypted push alert. Blue Haven plant, emergency shutdown. My breath hitched. I elbowed Ellen awake. She read the message, color draining from her cheeks. Lockwood leaned across the aisle, eyes wide. Chemical spill? He whispered. I connected to in-flight Wi-Fi so slow it felt like telegraph. Alvarez's name popped in the chat thread. Coltonai's unknown contaminant in bioreactor. Local inspectors on site. Production halted. I typed back. Casualties? None so far, but effluent exceeded limits. Press already sniffing. I buried my face in my hands. Blackwood's fingerprints reeked. It was too neat, too timed. Ellen squeezed my arm. Stay focused. Abu Dhabi first, then we fight fires. I forced a nod, though worlds burned behind my eyes. We landed in crisp desert night at 2:10. The air smelled of jet fuel and distant jasmine. A black Tesla with tinted windows whisked us past palms lit like candelabra toward Saadiyat Island. where ADESF's glass tower rose above the gulf like a shard of dawn waiting to happen. Inside, marble floors reflected constellations of recessed LEDs. Despite the hour, an assistant in dove-gray abaya greeted us with perfect posture. "Dr. Al-Rashid will see you in the Chemical Innovation Lab." Quote. She led us through silent corridors until biometric doors parted, revealing a gleaming laboratory where robotic arms pipetted green solution into microwells. At a workstation stood Samira Al-Rashid, late 30s, posture like a saber, hijab the deep blue of ocean trenches. "Ms. Mercer," she said, voice low and resonant. "Your flight was uncomfortable?" "Eventful," I conceded. She gestured to stools around a lab bench. "Show me why your polymer outruns petroleum." I unwrapped the seaweed film, laid it beside a Blue Haven Ecofilm swatch. Left, Arcadia. Dissolves in 72 hours of seawater exposure, leaving trace nutrients. Right. Blue Haven's prior product contains ethylene. Degrades in centuries. Samira lifted tweezers, peeled a sliver from each sample, and placed them in twin beakers of saline solution under a digital microscope. Screen projections bloomed. Molecular chains danced like constellations. She watched as the Arcadia segment already began fraying. "Impressive," she murmured. "But scalability is Achilles." Ellen slid forward our deck, showing the Spanish plant livestream, now embarrassingly dark. My heart thudded. Seville line outputs 1 ton per hour, expanding to 5 within the quarter thanks to sovereign-backed capital. Samira's eyes narrowed. "Yet tonight the line is idle." I sucked breath. "You monitor?" "Due diligence never sleeps," she said. "Explain." Lockwood spoke. "Sabotage. Our rival, Blackwood Capital, aims to drive default via a synthetic short. We came seeking your armor." He handed her the manila envelope evidence. Samira skimmed spreadsheets with the brisk proficiency of top-tier analysts. Her brow furrowed. "Derivatives with Cayman shells. Elegant evil." I leaned in. "Stop the short, refuel operations, and Arcadia becomes world's first, at-scale marine-safe packaging. We're not asking for charity. We're offering stake in the infrastructure of survival." She met my gaze, and for a moment I saw not an investor but a scientist who once believed pure knowledge could fix everything. "Return at what multiple?" Ellen answered, voice clear. "Projected 22 Iranian rials % over 7 years, plus carbon credit upside pegged to EU auctions." Samira nodded slowly. "I'll call an emergency committee. They value narratives of resilience during Eid. They call it ****. She left, heels silent on epoxy floor. 3:50. We paced the atrium, footsteps echoing off glass. My phone buzzed. Alvarez again. Tries plant cleared. Spill traced to valve override. Manual. CCTV. Offline during event. I tapped speaker. "We're closing a backstop in Abu Dhabi." Alvarez exhaled. "Hurry. Blackwood's PR just seeded rumors of toxic bioslurry." I ended call, throat dry. 5:12. We sat in a crescent of leather chairs inside a Skybridge conference pod as holographic faces shimmered into view. 12 committee members across time zones. Singapore, Geneva, Riyadh, Toronto. Samira presided. She briefed them in Arabic, then nodded to me. I rose. A dozen pairs of eyes, some behind gold-rimmed glasses, others framed by desert mornings or cedar libraries, locked onto me. I told them everything. About the coastline that killed my grandmother's oysters. About Blue Haven's transformation from greenwashed Leviathan to chrysalis. About Blackwood's raven shadow. I spoke for 20 minutes without slides, voice hoarse yet unwavering. When I finished, a silence filled with billions of dollars worth of contemplation settled. A Canadian member finally asked, "What collateral do you offer if further sabotage occurs?" Ellen responded, "A first-position pledge of Arcadia's IP repository, plus step-in rights on the Seville plant should we default." A Saudi prince stroked his beard. "Will EU regulations remain favorable under a potential change in parliament?" Lockwood leaned forward. Our consortium drafted optional pathways leveraging WTO environmental exemptions. Arcadia's margins survive any political weather. Questions volleyed. We answered. Sweat trickled down my spine despite chilled air. Samira called for closed debate. Our feeds muted, camera lights blacked out. 10 agonizing minutes ticked by, each thunderous with heartbeat. When audio resumed, Samira's eyes glittered like wet obsidian. The committee has reached consensus. ADESF will subscribe to a £110 million green convertible note, exercisable into 51% of Arcadia SPV1 on milestone completion. I sagged, tears blurring lights. Ellen gripped my hand so hard bones ached. But, Samira added, voice a scalpel, funds release only upon independent verification that the Seville facility is operational and environmentally compliant within 7 calendar days. The relief snagged in my throat. 7 days to cleanse sabotage, restart production, and produce audit certificates. Lockwood pinched the bridge of his nose. Blue Haven's valve array will take at least 5 days to replace. Then we have 5, I said, wiping eyes dry. Book us the fastest flight. Samira handed over a digital token, the memorandum of terms. May courage be your architect. 6:40. Dawn stained the Gulf Peach. We rode the lift to ground. As doors opened, 2 men in dark suits stepped forward. Ms. Mercer? The taller asked. He showed a badge embossed with a peregrine, UAE, Federal Authority for Economic Security. Ellen stiffened. Is there an issue? Interpol red notice issued 1 hour ago, said the agent. Allegation, international securities fraud regarding Blue Haven Plastics. My pulse imploded. Blackwood again. Lockwood raised palms. This is a misunderstanding. The agent's partner produced digital cuffs. Sound in the lobby died as if vacuum sealed. Ellen glanced at me, white-knuckled. Cal? I inhaled. One breath, briny with fear but anchored by Samira's words. I will comply, I said, voice level. But this is corporate sabotage masquerading as law. The cuffs sealed cold around my wrists. Lights overhead burned surgical white. As they led me through towering glass doors into searing sunlight, I turned to Ellen. 7 days, I called. Prove Seville lives. She nodded, eyes shining. We will. Sand-hot wind whipped my hair free of its clip. Sirens wailed distant across the causeway, or maybe inside my skull. I whispered to the raven in my imagination, clip my wings and I will learn to run. Bind my feet and I will learn to crawl. But whatever shape you force upon me, I'm still moving toward dawn. Blackwood had caged me, but the planet does not recognize cages. It grows through steel and asphalt until towers crumble. And I would too. The single syllable echoed inside the armored van as it sped along the corniche, sirens slicing dawn into shards of blue light. Wrist restraints bit the soft skin above my pulse. Each jolt over expansion joints sending a spike of electricity up my forearms. The agents said nothing. I stared through the grated window at a sea that glittered like hammered tin, promising freedom in every direction but forward. I forced myself to count heartbeats, anchor my mind to something other than fear. 1, 2, 3. By 40, I understood that panic and purpose occupy the same neural bandwidth. Feed one and the other starves. Purpose needed calories. 41. I asked, voice steady, where are you taking me? The taller agent, name badge in Arabic, unreadable to me, glanced without turning his head. Financial Crimes Directorate. Preliminary hearing at 8. His English carried a clipped Oxford edge, a colonial echo that felt surreal in this glass and sand metropolis. 42. You've seized my electronic devices, I said. My associate requires access to compliance documents for the UK Competition Authority. Denial could be construed as obstruction. No reply. The van banked left. The sea disappeared behind a wall of mirrored skyscrapers that reflected the rising sun with blinding arrogance. The holding facility resembled a boutique hotel lobby, white marble, perfumed air, calligraphic murals quoting the Quran on justice. Only the silent guards with compact sidearms broke the illusion. They processed me with dispassionate efficiency. Retinal scan, fingerprints, a polite request to remove my necklace. The cuffed chain bearing my grandmother's oyster shell pendant dropped into a foil bag. I signed forms whose legal Arabic translations I couldn't read. My lawyer, appointed by the state, had yet to appear. A female officer guided me into a glass-walled interview room, furnished with 2 ergonomic chairs and a carafe of mint water. Air conditioning hummed at polar bear settings. She uncuffed me, then slid a tablet across the table. Pre-hearing brief. Charges: securities fraud, money laundering, market manipulation. Interpol code red designates flight risk. Please review. I scanned the summary. Blackwood's narrative painted Arcadia SPV-1 as a shell that had funneled illicit crypto gains, courtesy of the Chens, into Blue Haven Securities to artificially inflate carbon credit futures. Elegant and poisonous. The officer said, "You may contact one individual for counsel." One call? One encrypted message. Limited to 1,500 characters. My mind raced. Ellen needed constant data. Alvarez wrangled regulators. Samira brokered the sovereign funds. But in this crucible, I required someone who could move both legal and diplomatic levers. I typed to Samira. Boyras detained. Blackwood allegations weaponized. Hearing in 90 minutes. Need expert testimony and diplomatic assurance reinvestment legitimacy. Disclosure package on my cloud. Key. HA2025. I hit send. The screen blinked. Message transmitted. Tyrone Mance. They left me alone. I sipped water that tasted of steel and mint, focusing on the subtle sweetness as a reminder that life contained more than spreadsheets and sabotage. I remembered Grandpa once telling me oysters purify 30 liters of seawater a day. Not for profit, but because that is their nature. Maybe integrity was just filtration under pressure. The door clicked. A new figure entered, double-breasted suit, scent of oud and diplomacy. He introduced himself as Farid Nasri, special counsel for ADESF. Dr. Al-Rashid requested my presence. He placed a folder thicker than a novel on the table. This contains the fund's compliance records verifying Arcadia's documentation. We'll present it at the hearing. Relief flared, quickly followed by skepticism. Why help? Farid adjusted gold-rimmed glasses. Samira believes your technology is critical national interest. Water security, food chains, future investment positioning. And frankly, Blackwood's behavior threatens the Emirates' reputation as a predictable capital hub. Will the court listen? The UAE prides itself on due process. Provide evidence, and magistrates respond reasonably, he tapped the folder. But you must appear composed. Show panic, and it will validate the flight risk narrative. I inhaled, summoned a calm I didn't feel, and nodded. Courtroom 5 resembled a private banking hall. Teak panels, indirect lighting, touch-screen lecterns. The magistrate, a woman in dove-gray robes, presided beneath a subtly illuminated falcon crest. Blackwood's counsel appeared via hologram, thin-faced man whose nameplate read, Timothy Brannigan, QC. His eyes glittered like surgical scalpels. Brannigan spoke first, weaving accusations into a tapestry of half-truths. He claimed I leveraged non-public EU directive drafts to manipulate market sentiment, funneled illegally laundered crypto through the Chen twins' blockchain addresses, then used Blue Haven as a front to exploit sovereign subsidies. I recognized the strategy, overwhelm with complexity so the stain of wrongdoing clings even after disproof. He concluded by requesting my extradition to the UK. My turn. Farid advanced to the lectern, voice measured thunder. He presented evidence. Timestamps of our Blue Haven purchase predating Directive 2000/40/18 leaks. The Chen twins' tax amnesty disclosures. Blockchain forensics verifying clean transfers. Statements from the Andalusian mayor praising environmental compliance. He ended by submitting Samira's letter naming Arcadia a designated partner in the Gulf's blue economy roadmap. The magistrate recessed for deliberation. 10 agonizing minutes later, she returned, eyes unreadable. Detention extended for 24 hours pending further review, she said. Extradition request denied at this stage. The accused shall remain under house confinement at a monitored address. Her gavel sounded like a vault door slamming, but not locked, merely sealed for now. They transported me, not to prison, but to a serviced apartment overlooking turquoise marina water. A sensor cuff encircled my ankle, cold and humiliating, yet preferable to bars. 2 supervisors stationed in the hall ensured I remained within GPS radius. Ellen video-called within minutes, her face pixelated by poor Seville bandwidth. Cal, we replaced valves. Audit team arrives tomorrow. But Blackwood bribed a local union leader to stage a walkout. Half the technicians left mid-shift. I swallowed a curse. Can we fly in contractors? Christmas staffing shortage. I'm scrambling. Behind her, I glimpsed bioreactors gleaming beneath repair lights, still dormant. Listen, I said, lowering voice despite isolation. We have conditional funding, but only if we're online in, I checked watch, 128 hours. I know, we'll fix it, her bravado cracked. Just come back safe. Call ended. I sagged onto the sofa, gaze drifting across lavish furnishings, clearly designed for visiting dignitaries. I felt like a gilded prisoner. Night fell shimmering lime across the gulf. I sipped cardamom tea left by hospitality staff I never saw. The ankle cuff itched. I resisted the urge to scratch until skin reddened. Instead, I opened laptop. Authorities had returned it minus cellular, but Wi-Fi remained. I connected to our cloud workspace. Documents loaded sluggishly. A chat bubble appeared. Odette Chen. She wrote, Blackwood pivoting. They shorted our carbon credit futures via Tokyo desk. If Seville misses audit window, price collapses and derivative margins trigger. I typed back, need you to issue press statement reaffirming commitment. Signal confidence. Napra prices margins trigger. Hepla Kaliapai, Kalia Tiraj Taliapai, Heliratai, Kaliapai, Kaliapai, Kaliapai. Napra prices margins trigger. Hiriwisisk, she replied. I clenched teeth. Higher if we fail. She sent single emoji, crossed swords, then logged off. I took that as yes. At 2 o'clock, my apartment intercom buzzed. I flinched, heart in throat. Supervisors coordinated, then allowed one visitor, Samira. She entered in navy abaya, eyes reflecting marina lights like distant fireworks. I can't stay long, she said softly. Committee's legal division requires new assurance. Proof Blue Haven technology meets cradle-to-cradle standard. Not just dissolution, but nutrient recapture. 10 kilometers away, technicians argued over unions, and here I faced a fresh compliance hurdle. I exhaled. We have pilot data from the seaweed digesters. But the audit team is anchored by a professor I once supervised. She placed a small vial on the coffee table. Inside, translucent beads floated in clear solution. These are post-dissolution residues from your lab prototype. If you can show identical signature from Seville line, it satisfies cradle compliance. I can calibrate the sensors remotely, I said, hope flickering, but I need access to their spectrometer. Convince the unions back on the floor, and you'll have it. I nodded. Thank you. Samira hesitated, then touched my shoulder. Courage merits allies. She departed like a shadow returning to desert night. Morning sunlight speared through floor-to-ceiling glass. I brewed espresso and set to work. Through encrypted VoIP, I called Alvarez. Unions respect community, she said. Offer them a seat on your new Worker Safety Council. Promise training on seaweed extraction tech. Done, I assured her, though I had no idea how to charter such a council yet. We drafted a memorandum in Spanish, emailed to the union leader. Silence stretched. An hour ticked. Finally a reply, reunion a las 1500. Ven en persona. Ellen texted, we need you here. But the ankle cuff grounded me. I requested judicial permission to travel under guard. The magistrate's clerk responded, hearing at 13:30 to consider. 2 more hours. I paced, rehearsed arguments. A rap at the door. Farid returned, brandishing fresh legal filings. We petition for mission-critical business travel, he said. Provide guarantee via ADESF surety bond. 13:30 arrived. I stood once more before the magistrate, ankle monitor peeking below linen trouser hem. Farid argued necessity, public interest, sovereign oversight. Brannigan's hologram objected, citing flight risk to non-extradition jurisdiction, Spain. I countered, voice firm. I will submit passport to UAE authorities on departure and travel on an ADESF chaperoned flight. The planet gains nothing from me rotting in decor quarantine. The magistrate deliberated only 5 minutes. Travel approved for 72 hours, with continuous GPS tracing and escort. Failure to return escalates charges. Quote, the cuff clicked open like a metal sigh. 21 hours after arrest, I boarded a Dassault Falcon jet under ADESF charter. Ellen video called mid-ascent, relief flooding her features when she saw cuffless ankles. Union meets at 3. We still have valve calibrations and cradle compliance. En route, I said. Prep residual assays. The jet streaked across Mediterranean skies, the color of broken sapphires. I drafted speech in Spanish, rehearsed in mind, tweaked with Garcia Lorca quotes about green, how I want you green, to appeal to Andalusian pride. I pinged Kohler for emergency funds to cover union hazard pay. He authorized without complaint. Touchdown Seville, 13:10 local. Heat waves rippled above tarmac even in December. A black electric sedan awaited, ADESF driver, plus plainclothes guard. We sped past olive groves silvered by sun. The factory loomed, concrete, glass, scaffolding boned around new wastewater towers. Strikers clustered outside, high-vis vests, blazing neon in the light. Their banner read *Seguridad Primero. Inside the guardhouse, Ellen squeezed me like a life buoy. She looked 8 years older than 2 days ago, eyes red, grease on cheeks. 3 more sabotage incidents, she murmured. Someone tampered with the conveyor logic board. Later, I whispered, unions first. The meeting took place in a cafeteria that smelled of strong coffee and steel. 20 leaders, arms folded, faces grim. I spoke in Spanish, voice echoing off metal tables, conjuring visions of stable contracts, upskilling programs, and a profit-sharing pool pegged to carbon credit revenue. I passed around the sample vial Samira gifted, explaining how their shift's work could seed oceans with nutrients, not poison. A burly man with scar down his cheek asked, "Y la garantía?" The guarantee, I said, palm on heart, is your seat on the council drafting every safety protocol we signed today. I slid the memorandum across. I had no council yet, but I would build one from bedrock if they accepted. They murmured among themselves. Minutes stretched. Finally, the scarred man, Javier, nodded, scrawled signature, and offered me the pen. Union return, contingent on immediate hazard audits and double shift pay for holiday hours. Ellen exhaled a laugh that broke into tears. Work resumed at 17:45. Alarms chirped as power cycled. My guard shadowed me through corridors. But I barely noticed. I calibrated the mass spectrometer, uploaded Samira's reference spectra, and fed in a live flake from the first newly produced film roll. The machine hummed. Waveform blossomed on screen. It matched the nutrient recapture ratio within 2% of the prototype. Ellen whooped, drawing cheers. I saved the file, time-stamped. Clock said 1803 December 27th. We had 4 days to finish full audit, but the path finally cleared. Midnight. Plant pulsed with renewed life, conveyors singing. I stood on a catwalk watching sheets of emerald-tinged film scroll like endless hymn pages. Javier approached, wiping sweat. You kept word, he said, extending a calloused hand. I shook it, gratitude swelling. My phone vibrated, unknown number. I answered. A raspy voice. Ms. Mercer, lovely that production is back. Cold flooded my veins. Brannigan. Indeed. Wanted courtesy call before markets open Asia session. We've acquired majority of your carbon futures at premium. When supply floods, prices crash. You default anyway. Your synthetic short fails if ADESF backstops, I said. He chuckled. Provided they disperse. But any further incidents might delay compliance. Good luck. Call ended. I stared at humming machinery. Incidents. Sabotage wasn't over. Just then, alarms shrieked. Red strobes painted walls crimson. Over intercom. Fuego en sala eléctrica 2. Fire in electrical room 2. Smoke billowed beyond a loading bay. Workers shouted. Sprinklers triggered. I dashed downstairs, lungs burning with chemical-laced air. Inside electrical room, sparks cascaded from a panel pried open. Wires dangled like gutted nerves. At the center sat a small device, blinking red, arson timer wired to overload. We extinguished flames, but the damage was done. Main power bus scorched. Production halted again. 2 technicians suffered smoke inhalation. Ellen joined, eyes wide with fury. Another sabotage. How did they breach security? My guard spoke into radio, summoning police. I crouched, examining melted casing. Manufacturer label scratched off, but screw pattern matched custom modules from a contractor we'd hired last week. A referral from Blackwood HR, ironically. My phone dinged. Encrypted image message. A raven silhouette overlaying a ticking countdown. Time 7200. 72 hours until derivative margin call. I straightened, tasting copper in my mouth. We rebuild the bus in 48, I said to Ellen and Javier. Then we run triple shift. Quote. Javier nodded fierce. Lo haremos. But beneath resolve, dread coiled. Blackwood had men willing to risk fire in a polymer plant. What next? I imagined toxic gas release, sabotage of pressure vessels, catastrophes that could kill. I turned to my security guard. We need full perimeter lockdown, biometric entries, background checks on every contractor. He radioed headquarters. Sirens faded, leaving only drip of sprinklers. I closed eyes, felt exhaustion heavier than lead, but failure heavier still. Somewhere the raven ticked. 5:20. Emergency generators restored minimal power. Crew soldered cables under floodlights. I reviewed blueprints, searching for choke points to protect. Phone vibrated again. Samira, NIMSLA's committee concerned. Send incident report. I replied with video, data, assurances of restart timeline. She answered, you have my trust, but optics delicate. I typed, delivering full power within 36H. Time smoofa smoople. Shockwave hurled me against concrete. Dust engulfed corridor. Ears rang like cathedral bells shattering. Distantly, someone screamed. When dust thinned, I saw a section of mezzanine collapsed, where backup generators sat moments before. Flames licked debris. A pipe spewed steam. 2 workers lay motionless. Ellen crawled from rubble, coughing. Cal, you okay? Adrenaline answered for me. I pulled her to her feet. Emergency klaxons wailed anew. I realized then, Blackwood had escalated from sabotage to potential homicide. And if we stayed, more would die. I faced Ellen, smoke swirling like torn banners. This ends now. We take the fight to London. How? Generators blown. Audit in days. We expose Blackwood, publicly, with evidence Warren gave me. Force authorities to freeze their trading desks. We don't just defend, we attack. She nodded, determination blazing through soot. Then let's bury the raven. Sirens blended with rising dawn outside. The countdown in my mind flashed 68 to 17. Orange dawn seeped through smoke like iodine poured over gauze, tinting every shard of broken glass a sickly amber. Emergency crews had extinguished the second blast by the time I staggered from the mezzanine, lungs rasping as if lined with steel wool. Somewhere behind me, paramedics ferried 2 unconscious technicians toward waiting ambulances, their oxygen masks fogged with each uncertain breath. The plant, a cathedral of sustainability only hours before, now looked like a war zone. Black soot streaked stainless ducts, slag pooled beneath ruptured conduit, and every LED indicator glowed fatal red. Yet amid the wreckage, Javier stood barking orders, union vest shredded but resolve intact. He glanced up, caught my eye, and raised a fist. We were bloodied, not broken. Ellen limped beside me, hair singed at the ends. Main power bus is charred. We'll need a replacement unit. 72 hours at best if we can even source one during the holidays. We don't have 72, I said, voice frayed. Margin call hits in less than 68. My watch read 5:43 but felt like the wrong calendar entirely. She opened her mouth, then shut it when she spotted the steel in my expression. So what's the play? I turned toward the loading dock where dawn's first light began revealing scorch marks on the asphalt. We take Blackwood's claws off the chessboard. Permanently. Within an hour, the emergency operations room, formerly the plant's HR suite, buzzed with adrenaline and static electricity. Maps of London's legal district streamed across a projection wall, while a half-dozen portable batteries hummed to keep laptops alive. I stood in the center, flanked by Ellen, Warren Lockwood, and Alvarez on a video wall the size of a cinema screen. Our priorities are simultaneous, I began, voice projected through bruised ribs. 1. Restore production. 2. Neutralize Blackwood's synthetic short. 3. Deliver proof of sabotage to regulators and press before the Asia session closes. Alvarez's rich alto crackled through the speakers. I've secured a data room on a Swiss press platform. Dump everything by 1600 GMT. Embargo lifts at 1900. Warren nodded, looking more hollow-eyed than I'd ever seen him. I have contacts in the Serious Fraud Office willing to open an investigation if we provide direct evidence Blackwood ordered industrial sabotage. Brannigan's phone records, emails, anything. How do we get those? Ellen asked. I inhaled. From Blackwood's own servers. Lockwood cursed softly. You'll never get access. I already have a key, I said, pulling a small, battered USB from my pocket. Brannigan gave it to me, he just didn't realize it. Ellen blinked. When? Back in Abu Dhabi, during remote hearings. The hologram handshake. They transmitted a discovery bundle with tracking pixels. Samira's cyber team stripped the pixel stream. It included a dormant credential set for Blackwood's litigation archive. Likely an oversight by their junior counsel. Alvarez's eyes widened. Can you exploit it remotely? I shook my head. Archive requires biometric handshake from inside their London secure floor. We need boots on the ground. Lockwood swallowed. That floor has more cameras than MI5. How do you plan to? We walk straight through the front door, I said, as a settlement meeting. Silence rippled outward. You're serious, Ellen whispered. I nodded. If we request mediation citing ongoing sabotage, Blackwood's compliance division must log us in as guests. That moment, their system assigns us temporary but privileged access tokens. We Trojan horse the credential set, exfiltrate emails detailing sabotage orders, and mirror their derivative position book. Once we have proof, we alert regulators and freeze trades. Lockwood exhaled, as if something heavy exited his chest. Risky, but possible. I'll go, I said. Not alone, Ellen squeezed my hand. I come too. Alvarez tapped her stylus against tablet. My Madrid forensic team will stand by to process raw dumps. Javier's voice cut in from a corner, translating for two technicians. The union stays to rebuild. We'll work shifts round the clock. Bus unit maybe 40 hours if replacement parts flown from Bilbao. Make it 36, I said. I'll have Kohler charter a cargo helicopter. The countdown in my head blinked. 66 to 12. 10:20. Seville Airport. Our chartered turboprop lifted into pale winter sky, carrying Ellen, me, Lockwood, and two of Samira's cybersecurity operatives disguised as consultants. I wore the same soot-smeared suit from the plant, deliberate optics of urgency. Ellen squeezed my knee as the plane banked north. If Blackwood suspects, they'll block the meeting. They won't, I said, showing her an email I drafted on takeoff. Subject line, RE, urgent mediation replant disaster. Language framed as desperate settlement to avoid worker deaths. inviting Blackwood's general counsel to negotiate face-to-face at 1400 in their London office. I clicked send. Seconds later, server bounce confirmed delivery. Lockwood muttered, "This is either brilliance or suicide." I thought of the collapsed mezzanine and promised corpses that might have been. Sometimes it's both. 12:48 Greenwich Mean Time. London City Airport. Fog clung like wet feathers. A rented electric sedan whisked us through midday gridlock toward Blackwood Tower, its obsidian facade looming above the Thames like a monument to predation. In the back seat, Samira's operatives, Layla and Omar, briefed Ellen on infiltration steps: token capture, credential injection, secure VPN tunnel to Madrid. They wore nondescript suits, but their eyes glittered with hacker zeal. Lockwood dabbed at a nervous sweat with monogrammed handkerchief. "Remember, we keep them talking at least 20 minutes. I nodded, rehearsing lines. Precisely 14:02, we entered Blackwood's marble atrium. A Christmas tree of black glass ornaments towered near the lifts, fitting tribute to their holiday spirit. Receptionists scanned our IDs, issued visitor badges, and escorted us to elevator bank B. Ellen whispered, "Token capture begins now." Omar's watch blinked green. The building's guest Wi-Fi handshake logged our devices. We ascended to floor 33. Doors slid open into a vast lobby, where portraits of Blackwood founders eyed visitors with colonial disdain. Martin Hale, the Raven himself, strode forward, flanked by Timothy Brannigan QC and 2 security officers. "Ms. Mercer," Hale said, voice velvet stretched over barbed wire, "we did not expect mediation so promptly after your setbacks." I forced a brittle smile. "Catastrophes clarify priorities." He gestured to a conference room, a glass cube floating above the city like a specimen jar. As we walked, Omar feigned adjusting his cufflink. Layla brushed past a security node, antenna in her purse capturing the Active Directory handshake. Inside, we sat. Hale clasped hands. "You allege sabotage. Where is proof?" Ellen spoke first. "We have CCTV of intruders hired through your HR contractor, plus forensic evidence of explosive devices bearing ID codes traceable to your supply chain." Hale's brows arched. "Extraordinary claim. Surely you will provide the data?" "Once we agree to independent arbitration," I said. Brannigan smirked. "Arbitration requires trust. You've shown none." Omar's phone buzzed. Signal the credential injection succeeded. Now Layla initiated exfiltration. She slipped USB into the table feed, claiming to share draft terms. Conversation blurred into legal fencing: gross negligence versus willful misconduct, duty of care, force majeure. I kept them busy while clock ticked. Midway, as Brannigan droned about indemnities, I let my gaze drift to London's skyline, grey spires, cold river, and remembered my grandmother teaching me to shuck oysters with patient hands. Her lesson: twist gently, find the hinge. Brute force only shatters shell. We were at the hinge now. A discreet vibration signaled on my phone. Stata package secure. I met Ellen's eyes. She gave microscopic nod. Time to close. I leaned forward. "Gentlemen, we can litigate for years or cooperate within hours. Choose." Brannigan's pupils narrowed at my confidence. He sensed shift. "We'll review your so-called evidence," he said. "Excellent," I replied, standing. "Expect a draft by day's end." Hale rose slower. "You carry heavy confidence, Ms. Mercer. Beware the weight." "Weight builds muscle," I said, walking out. 14:58. Elevator doors shut. Layla exhaled. 15 gigabytes extracted. Email chains, procurement orders for explosives, derivative logs. Omar grinned. "We got their internal Slack messages, celebrating Operation Ravenous." Lockwood's shoulders sagged with relief. We hurried outside, merging with holiday shoppers. Ellen typed into secure chat. Madrid team confirming receipt. Countdown, 52:09. Back in the sedan, I pinged Alvarez. "Package delivered. Prepare press release." She responded with a fireworks gif. We sped toward Canary Wharf to meet Serious Fraud Office. Along the way, my phone buzzed persistent. Unknown caller ID flagged as Brighton Hospital. I answered. A nurse's voice. Ms. Mercer, your mother has been admitted. Cardiac arrhythmia. A punch to gut. Is she okay? She's stable but asking for you. I closed eyes, pain slicing sharper than sabotage. I'll come tonight. Ellen stared as I hung up. Cal? My mom. Breath hitched. Blackwood knows. Lockwood clenched jaw. They wouldn't. They would, I forced calm. We stay on mission. But Dread gnawed. How far would a raven fly to protect its nest? 1620. SFO intake offices resembled drab classrooms. We handed flash drive to Inspector Rana, who scanned preliminary files. Explosive purchase orders cross-referenced to Blackwood subsidiaries. Emails approving, quote, disruptive field operations. Her eyes hardened. This is criminal conspiracy. She made copies. Dispatched digital warrants to freeze Blackwood's London trading desk. Takes effect 9 o'clock tomorrow. That's too late, Ellen whispered. Asia session. Rana shook head. We need overnight judge. Quote. I stepped forward. Lives are at stake. Request emergency injunction. Rana studied me. I will try. 1703. My phone chimed. Alvarez. Two's data upload live 1900. Prepare statement. I typed near mythic adrenaline on it. We drove to a studio rented by Kohler's PR firm. Makeup artist dabbed soot still lining my hairline. I insisted she leave it. Cameras rolled. I spoke into lens. Blackwood Capital orchestrated a campaign of industrial sabotage, endangering workers' lives and poisoning our planet. Today we expose their crimes with hard evidence. We call on regulators, investors, and citizens to demand justice. Recording ended. Editor queued for simultaneous release with document trove. Ellen checked watch. 1 hour to go live. She then pulled me aside. Cal, you need to see your mother. My place is here, I said. She raised you, and Blackwood may keep striking. Go. I looked at Lockwood. Handle the release. He nodded solemnly. 1810. Train from London Bridge to Brighton rattled south, carrying me across winter marshes. Dark rolled in. My reflection in carriage window looked hollow, eyes ringed, but alive. Halfway, phone buzzed. Samira. Judge-approved injunction. Blackwood trades frozen across EU and UAE jurisdictions, effective immediately. A surge of gratitude. Thank you. But her next words chilled marrow. Brannigan resigned 30 minutes ago. Their head of operations went dark. Be careful. 1900. My train tunneled beneath the downs when press embargo lifted. Notifications exploded. Tweets, news banners, activist hashtags #ToGravenExposed. I scrolled headlines. Asterisk, leaked emails tie Blackwood to factory bomb plot. Asterisk, serious fraud office opens criminal probe. Asterisk, investors flee Raven Fund amid scandal. Victory tasted metallic, like blood mixed with champagne. I reached Brighton Hospital 1946. Mum lay pale but smiling faintly. Machines beeped steady. I clasped her hand, tears igniting behind eyelids. I watched you on telly, she murmured. You sound like your Gran. I laughed wetly. Gran would have scolded me for camera posture. How's the fight? She asked. Nearly done. She squeezed. Proud of you. A nurse ushered me out 10 minutes later. In corridor, I checked chat. Ellen. Mean was generators replaced ahead of schedule. First test start 2200. Audit team en route. Relief bloomed. But another notification stacked atop. A voicemail transcription from unknown number. Greater than, you think this is over? You tore out one wing, but Ravens have two. Look east. Look east. Asia session? I scrolled to Commodities app. Blackwood Singapore affiliates still active. Injunction limited to EU and UAE. They pivoted. If Singapore desk dumped carbon futures, prices would crater before our audit finished. I dialed Ellen. We need to register Arcadia credits on Asia Exchange as green asset. Lock the price. How? Kohler's Bank has seats in Singapore. Clock. 49:02. 22:07. Back in London at Kohler's Canary Wharf office, neon towers mirrored in Thames. In War Room, Kohler's traders frantically coded algorithmic buy walls for carbon futures, marked Arcadia_guard. We needed to buy up to floor price before Blackwood sold. Middle screens flashed risk models. I stood between desks like a field general. And right here, amidst that tornado of keyboards and caffeine, the moment required pause. Greater than asterisk. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. Asterisk. A grin twitched despite chaos. I'd promised the audience that line. Night deepened. At 0000 London time, 8 o'clock Singapore, Blackwood's desk opened. Red numbers cascaded, sell orders hammering carbon credits. Kohler's algorithms countered, absorbing volume, price wobbled but held. However, each purchase drained our cash reserves. We risked margin calls ourselves. Omar patched into Singapore feed. Liquidity crunch in 6 minutes. I grabbed headset. Root funds from ADESF convertible note. Samira authorized drawdown. Compliance officer balked. Docs incomplete. Override, emergency environmental threat, I snapped. We'll tidy paperwork after we save the planet's first biodegradable supply chain. Seconds ticked. Funds appeared. Buy wall fattened. Price stabilized. Blackwood switched tactics, dumping Blue Haven equity instead. That risked market perception of failure. Ellen flagged newswires spouting, quote, Blue Haven stock crashes. Panic might spook auditors. Counter with press briefing, I said. Highlight union partnership and generator repairs. PR team blasted update linking live stream of plant humming again under partial power. Audience engagement soared. Green hearts, thumbs, hashtags, #Arcadia Live. 2:30. Exhaustion blurred edges. I rested head on desk moment, dreamt of ravens flying backward into storm, wings charred. Phone buzzed. Alvarez. Needs signature to finalize Swiss whistleblower protections. I.E. signed, fingers trembling. Omar cheered from pit. We forced Singapore desk to halt after hitting risk limits. They're done. Applause rippled, ragged, and disbelief-laced. Countdown, 41 to 55. At dawn, we raced back to Gatwick for flight to Seville. Not private this time. Every spare pound sat in market orders. Economy seats felt poetic. On board, Ellen slept against my shoulder. I stared at winter's sunrise, melting frost on window, pondering what fresh hell awaited at the plant. Upon landing, Javier greeted with triumphant grin. Bus unit online, full power tests passed. Audit team in control room. We hurried inside. Bioreactors hummed, conveyors gleamed, new fire suppression foam installed like snowdrifts. Audit leader, a gray-bearded professor, shook my hand. Cradle-to-cradle metrics verified. Rare to see such turnaround. Ellen's eyes glistened. Production run underway? He asked. Javier signaled. Valves opened. Seaweed slurry surged. Emerald film unspooled, flawless. Professor nodded, scribbling. Preliminary pass. Final certificate signed after 8-hour continuous run. We exhaled. Countdown, 32 to 12. 8 hours later, certificate printed, signed, sealed. ADESF wire transferred full investment. Our bank pinged with credit. Arcadia officially solvent. Crew broke into cheers. Someone popped kava. I sipped, letting bubbles cut through weeks of grime. Phone buzzed. Inspector Rana. Arrest warrants issued for Hale, Brannigan, 2 executives. We raided Blackwood's offices. I grinned at Ellen. Raven grounded. We embraced, trembling. But celebration fractured when Javier burst in. Callista, North Wing sensors, pressure spike in ethylene storage. Automatic shutdown failed. My stomach plummeted. Ethylene, we flushed those tanks. Someone refilled. We sprinted to control panels. Gauges redlined. Relief valves welded shut. A countdown clock blinked 0 hours 9 minutes and 58 seconds. Makeshift bomb. Generators thundered. Alarms screamed. Workers scrambled. If tanks ruptured, half the plant would detonate, killing dozens, nullifying audit, souring investment. Ellen met my gaze. Manual vent on roof. I'm going, I said. No, we go, she retorted. We grabbed breathing masks and raced metal stairs toward roof hatch, sirens wailing times erosion. 8 minutes, 7. Wind tore at us as we emerged onto corrugated expanse. White tanks loomed, pressure hiss singing lethal symphony. I clambered ladder, fingers slick with sweat. Brannigan's voice echoed in memory. Ravens have 2 wings. I reached valve wheel. It wouldn't budge. Welded seams glinting. Ellen tossed me crowbar. I jammed it. Braced feet heaved. Metal groaned. Clock. 0 hours, 1 minute and 42 seconds. Valve shards sheared. Jet of gas whistled skyward, shredding night. Sparks from damaged wiring danced. Static charge could ignite cloud. Ground it! Ellen shouted, tossing copper cable. I attached clamp, praying. Gas plume bent away in wind. Clock. 0 hours, 0 minutes and 13 seconds. 12. Pressure gauge fell into green. Alarms muted. Silence crashed so loud it rang. Ellen collapsed to knees, laughing into sobs. I sank beside her, chest heaving, gaze on stars now visible as smoke cleared. Below, factory lights flickered back to steady glow. We had won. Or so I thought until my phone lit with a call from Samira, breathless. Callista, there's been a breach at ADESF headquarters. Hackers wiped the wire confirmation. Investment reversal triggered. If we don't prove funds usage in 6 hours, transfer auto retracts and creditors claim default. 6 hours. After all. I stared at gas plume dissipating into dawn. Samira, give me those 6 hours. She whispered, I will fight, but Blackwood's allies still fly. Hurry. The Raven's second wing beat against the window of history, unbroken still. I rose, bloodied palms stinging. Ellen stood, matching resolve. Back to London? Back to war, I said. Countdown reset, 5 hours 59 minutes and 58 seconds. The air on the Seville roof still crackled with ghost static when we sprinted back down the graded stairs, hearts pounding double time beneath smoke-stained jackets. 5 hours, 59 minutes. That was all Arcadia's future had left before the auto-reversal yanked every dirham of Samira's lifeline from our accounts. A digital guillotine, already mid-swing. Below, the factory glowed urgent amber, floodlights bouncing off fresh fire-retardant foam. Workers thrummed like a single organism, resetting breakers, scanning pressure gauges, cheering as each display flicked from red to green. Their triumph should have felt like sunrise after nuclear night. Instead, it tasted like unripe fruit. Victory without permanence is only a lullaby sung to keep fear asleep. I pulled Ellen aside in the stairwell's hollow hush. 5 hours, I said. Hackers wiped the transfer trail. If ADESF can't verify usage, the funds vanish and our creditors swarm. She knuckled soot from her eyes. We have the certificate. We have raw production logs. Not enough. My words were glass. Samira needs incontrovertible proof that every cent went to operational capital, not speculation or compliance will claw it back. Ellen's jaw flexed. Then we give her the ledger in person. We'll hand-deliver drives, show auditors the live run. Flights? Commercials out. Holiday cancellations everywhere. She checked phone. Private charter earliest in 2 hours. I shook head. London is closer. Adi, what if we bring the auditors here? She blinked. Move the mountain, not the climber. My blood hummed. We call Samira, request remote validation under Sovereign Observer. Meanwhile, we publish the chain of custody for every euro. Ellen's brow furrowed. Publicly? Proprietary data. We redact margins, I cut in. Transparency or death. A voice echoed from below. Javier. Callista. We found the welder who sealed the ethylene valves. He's unconscious. Tranquilizer dart. My pulse spiked. Blackwood's tentacles still wriggled, but time to dissect them later. Now we amputate risk. I turned back to Ellen. Secure the data. I'll prep the feed. 2:15. Emergency ops room reinvented itself again, this time into a broadcast studio. Diego, a wiry technician who once DJ'd Andalusian raves, rigged ring lights and a shotgun mic atop crates of seaweed resin. Caffeine fumes mingled with ozone from half-replaced circuitry. Ellen and I stood before a sheet of Arcadia film stretched as backdrop, its translucent green catching every photon like hope made tangible. Javier held a tablet running our ledger dashboard, live readouts of ADESF funds streaming into supplier invoices, bus unit purchase, safety retrofits, union hazard bonuses. Each entry line itemized, time-stamped, and cryptographically signed. I steadied breathing, then faced the lens. World, you watched Arcadia rise from ashes tonight, I began, voice low but steel-laced. You saw sabotage fail, workers prevail, and biodegradable film flow like emerald rivers. Yet our work can still die in silence, unless truth stays louder than lies. I gestured to the scrolling ledger. This is every cent of sovereign investment, mapped to the bolts and wages that rebuilt this plant. Hackers tried to erase it. We resurrect it now. Asterisk, asterisk, drop a globe if you believe industry must serve the planet, not poison it. Diego switched to screen share. Live production cameras, audit team inspecting seals, union reps signing safety logs. Transparency metastasized into spectacle. I concluded, Samira, Compliance Board, your portal credentials await. Verify in real time. The window closes in 5 hours. So does the planet's patience. Stream ended. Chat exploded. Blue check marks. Climate NGOs. Journalists. Hashtag Arcadia Ledger shot trending within minutes. 3:05. Samira pinged. Validation team connecting. ETA 20 minutes. But another message overlaid, encrypted, unsourced. Stop digging, or your mother codes blue in Brighton. I froze, lungs calcifying. The corridor tilting before my eyes. Ellen saw screen, mouth hardening to a thin blade. They wouldn't, she whispered. They set bombs, I rasped. They would. I dialed Brighton Hospital. Night shift nurse confirmed mum stable, heart monitor nominal. Relief flared, then dread. Stability is a fragile hostage. Lockwood called next. We intercepted chatter on Blacknet forums. Mercenaries discussing a final feather. They mentioned Brighton. Fury ignited. They target my family to regain leverage. Police alerted, he said. Still, you may want to. No, I cut. Running invites more threats. Ellen gently pulled phone from my grip. Cal, if they touch your mum, you'll never forgive yourself. I stared at audit crew prepping in adjoining room. White coats, data pads. Arcadia needed me. Mom needed me. The same truth. People rely on systems that refuse to fail. Decision carved itself. Protect both by finishing this war fast. Ellen, I said, voice steady. Stay here. Shepherd auditors. Javier commands security. I fly to Brighton, make sure no one lays a finger on my mother. Remote tether keeps me in loop. She opposed instantly. Too risky. You're prime target. Which makes me bait, I countered. Draw them away from the plant. She hated the logic, but saw the necessity. She nodded, eyes glossy. Then take Sergio, he's ex-Guardia Civil. Sergio, a broad-shouldered maintenance foreman, stepped forward. I'm your shadow. 3:40. Arcadia's corporate van peeled out of gates, sirens wailing as local police escorted us to San Pablo Airport. In cargo hold awaited a twin-engine Beechcraft on emergency charter, gift from Kohler's family office. We boarded with only laptops and a flame-proof case containing physical backup drives. The pilot, a woman named Yara, taxied before clearances finished. Engines roared, tires left tarmac, Andalusian lights dwindled. I strapped in opposite Sergio, whose bulk looked carved from granite. He handed me noise-canceling headset. Focus on mission, Jeffa. I opened secure link. Ellen's feed displayed auditors verifying supply invoices. Samira's face appeared. Checksum matches ledger. Compliance satisfied, but board demands final sign-off on physical asset inspection. Financial clause. Define physical asset, I said over engine hum. Finished pallets ready for shipment. She checked watch. They want 30 tons filmed with timestamp before withdrawal cutoff. Ellen jumped in. Production may hit 25 tons by then. We need overtime shifts. Javier shouted in background. Podemos hacerlo. I said, push line speed to safe max. Document everything. 4:55 London time. The Beechcraft pierced low clouds, Gatwick's runway lights like sequins on black velvet. But Yara banked east toward a smaller strip. Shoreham Airport. Less media attention. Samira arranged special landing clearance. Wheels kissed asphalt. Brakes screamed. A dark blue Jaguar awaited on tarmac, headlights cutting mist. Behind the wheel sat Inspector Rana herself. Brighton is 15 minutes, she said as Sergio and I jumped in. On the drive, she briefed, we arrested Hale and Brannigan, but an unaccounted operative escaped, former SAS codename Corax. MI5 warns he's obsessive. Motivation? Blackwood bonus tied to Arcadia failure. My spine chilled. And he's in Brighton? Possible. She accelerated. Supercharger whine stitching night. 5:13. Hospital parking lot glared under sodium lamps. Police cruiser idled. 2 constables stood guard. Rana flashed badge. We rushed inside. Corridors smelled of antiseptic and machine oil. Mum's ward lay dim but peaceful. She slept, oxygen cannula dancing with each breath. A male nurse charted vitals. He looked up, smiled. She's stable. No disturbances. Relief slackened muscles I didn't know I clenched. Sergio secured adjoining rooms, radioing status in Spanish. Rana stationed constables at exits, then stepped into hallway to coordinate. I sank into chair by Mum's bedside, brushing ash-crusted hair from forehead. She stirred, eyes opening. Caramel? Her nickname for me since childhood. I'm here, I whispered, squeezing her hand. World's noisy, but this room is quiet. She smiled faintly. Your gran would say, finish the dance before curtain falls. Tears blurred vision. I will, Mum. Phone vibrated. Ellen, pallet count 28 tons, working on last 2. Auditors satisfied so far. Clock, 2:21 remaining. I typed encouragement, then tucked phone away. Mum deserved minutes unmarred by tyranny of zeros and ones. But the universe disobeyed. A distant elevator ding echoed wrong. Metallic clang too sharp for hospital hush. Sergio appeared in doorway, hand on concealed pistol, eyes narrowed. Stay here, he mouthed. He and Rana slipped out, fear coiled. I kissed Mum's forehead, whispered love, then slipped into corridor. Lights flickered. Nurse station unmanned. A crash, supply trolley overturned. Shadows danced at corridor's far end. Callista! Rana hissed, waving me back. Too late. Figure emerged. Tall, covert ops stance, silenced pistol glinting. Corax, Rana spat. He aimed. Sergio fired first. Bullets sparked off metal doorframe. Corax rolled, returning fire. Glass shattered. Alarms shrieked. Patients screamed. I ducked behind Gurney, heart detonating. Corax advanced. One-track mind. He wanted me. Leverage for investment reversal. Rana flanked, firing. Corax clipped her arm. She fell with grunt. Sergio tackled him. They crashed through linen cart. Guns skidded. I scrambled, grabbed Corax's discarded firearm. Hand shook, but aim true. The teenage vigilante matured. Corax swung elbow, dropping Sergio, lunged toward me. Step closer and see what a bioplastic CEO can do, I growled. Corax froze, assessing. Sirens wailed. Security now inbound. He smiled, thin. Funds retract at sunrise. You'll lose anyway. I smirked. Sun already rose in Seville. Ellen's voice burst through phone speaker. 30 tons achieved! Uploading documentation. Corax's jaw twitched. I thumbed safety off. He raised hands. Police swarmed, cuffing him. 6, 10. Sunlight filtered peach through blinds as paramedics bandaged Rana's arm. Mum slept, blissfully unaware of firefight. I stepped into courtyard, exhaustion crushing, yet spirit buoyant. Ellen video called, face streaked with machine grease and tears. Auditors signed. Samira confirmed compliance. Investment locked. Cheers erupted behind her. I laughed. A raw, feral sound. We did it. And Blackwood? Corax apprehended. Leadership jailed. Funds frozen. The Raven is flightless. She exhaled, eyes shining. Come home, Cal. I will, after one more thing. 10 o'clock, London High Court. Emergency hearing broadcast worldwide. I stood beside Rana and Samira, facing panel of judges poised to ratify settlement and injunctions. Hale and Brannigan absent. Cells in Belmarsh. Prosecution presented sabotage evidence. Hospital attack. Financial crimes. Defense sought leniency. Blamed rogue operative. Judges unmoved. They enjoined Blackwood from trading environmental derivatives for 10 years, ordered reparations to injured workers, and mandated public apology broadcast primetime. Gavel fell. History pivoted. Reporters swarmed. I spoke once. Let this be precedent. Profit without planet equals prison. Flashbulbs winked, capturing soot scars still tracing my cheek. I let them. Scars narrate survival. Epilogue. Seville, New Year's Eve. Fireworks arced over the Guadalquivir, reflections waltzing on water. The factory's windows throbbed with music from Union family celebration. Kids chasing bubbles of sea salt foam soap gleaned from polymer byproduct. Ocean-safe, biodegradable joy. I stood on the mezzanine, rebuilt, steel glinting new, overlooking production lines immaculate as orchestra rose. Ellen joined, draping blanket over our shoulders. 7 million units shipped, she said, voice awed. Retailers begging for more. Tell them Q forms behind the planet, I teased. She laughed. You know what this means? It means Blackwood was necessary, I answered, surprising us both. Adversity proves conviction. Without their refusal, we might have built slower, compromised more. She squeezed my hand. To refusing refusal. Below, Javier popped cava, foam spraying cheers. Workers lifted glasses toward us. I raised an invisible toast. Asterisk, asterisk. If you'd back the planet over profiteers every time, hit that like, then share this story with someone who needs courage today. Clock struck midnight. Sky erupted in constellations of color. Sea breeze carried promise instead of particulate plastic. My phone buzzed. Mum's selfie. Hospital discharge papers and thumbs up. Caption. Curtain falls. Dance complete. I wiped tear, whispering thanks to winds. I faced Ellen. Future reflected in her eyes. Clean. Formidable. Unscripted. We're not done, I said. Arcadia isn't a company. It's momentum. Where next? She asked, smile daring. We take on single-use medical plastics, I said, turn hospitals from waste factories into circular gardens. She laughed, sparks of ambition fanning. Time to build again. We descended to floor, confetti of polymer ribbons fluttering around. Drums of 100% seaweed film shimmered under LED glow, ready to ship. As celebrations roared, a quiet settled inside me, stillness after storm. Refusal birthed revolt. Revolt birthed renewal. The Raven fell, but something else took flight. A murmuration of starlings, ordinary people in synchronized defiance, writing new patterns across sky. I closed eyes, felt their wing beats thrumming beneath my ribs, and stepped into tomorrow. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.